Hello and thank you for tuning into Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm your host Brandon Yates, and as always I'm joined by my two phenomenal co-hosts Yang Guang and Tianyu, and today we are going to be discussing a bit of a sleeping giant in European football, I'd say. I think with all of the drama that's been going on in the Bundesliga and the Premier League and even in La Liga, I think Serie A has kind of been in the back of a lot of football fans' minds, unless you're supporting a Serie A team. But Inter Milan have quietly gone about their business and done some incredible things and have delivered a sensational performance in Serie A this season. I mean, I suppose they disappointed a little bit in the Champions League compared to last season where they managed to get to the final against City. But that being said, just their pretty much total dominance of the Serie A and the fashion in which they ultimately claimed the Scudetto was pretty phenomenal indeed. And I think it will be remembered for quite some time. And I also think it's a model that a lot of other European teams can look at and analyze to maybe change the way that they've approached certain things, like Manchester United, for example. And I'll make that comparison a little bit later on. But staying with Inter Milan, Yang Guang, a really fantastic season. I think scored the most goals, conceded the least, and just delivered a really phenomenal season, even considering all the changes that they went through and the success they managed to achieve last season. So when you look at the team that they had to rebuild, what's been behind their success, particularly in the Serie A this season?
First of all, congratulations to Inter Milan. What a dominant season. What a classic win in that Milan derby. By the way, the Milan derbies these seasons have been one-sided almost. It seems like Inter has found a winning formula against AC Milan.
They sure have.
And they've made the statement that Milan belongs to blue and black.
And I hope there's no AC Milan fans watching or listening at the moment, because those fans, particularly the Inter and the AC Milan fans, are probably some of the fiercest out there in the world. And also, we mentioned Inter lifting the Serie A title, but to do it against AC Milan in that fashion, I don't think it's actually ever been done before, if I'm not mistaken, where they actually lifted the title in a match against AC Milan and celebrated in front of their bitter rivals. So I think that's going to be something that Inter fans will remind AC Milan fans about for a long time. Yeah. But also I think something that the Milan players and the AC Milan fans will not forget anytime soon. And I'm sure they'll be dying for revenge.
Just imagine celebrating in front of the AC Milan fans for the title. It's just
it's like when Arsenal celebrated a title win at Old Trafford. I think it was like 20 years ago, but it's something that United fans just cannot forget.
And we saw another fire barrel in the derby game. The conflict between the two sides reminded me of the old Milan derby, filled with drama, intensity, and red cards all over the place.
And flares amongst the fans. I love it.
Talking about this Inter squad, I would say they are really good at finding those seemingly behind-the-times players, some veterans who have passed their prime.
Agreed.
That's a nice way of saying cheap old men. Yes. No, look, I get it though. Like, I think sometimes when you have the ability to go out there and get an experienced player that other teams have overlooked for a low price is quite a smart move. It reminds me of the film, have you ever seen Moneyball? Where it talks about transformation that happened in Major League Baseball, where the Oakland Athletics managed to use analytics to sign players for very low fees that other teams had overlooked. And it sounds like Inter's done something similar.
Yeah, like their players, Mkhitaryan, Juan Cuadrado, Matteo Darmian. I must say they've hired good scouts. Inter. I think their only big spending last summer was Benjamin Pavard, but still, he only cost Inter like 30 million euro.
And he's also proved to be one of their best players. So
that's really bad.
Other cool players like Marcus Thuram and the names I just mentioned were basically free transfers. Inter was really careful about how they spend money. There are financial reasons behind, not only for Inter, but other Italian teams as well. But Inter really spent their money smartly, I think. Inter reminds me of the Hollywood movie, the Expendables.
Okay.
Led by...
Minus the steroids.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Jet Li. Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Bruce Willis.
Yeah, all of the girly men in Hollywood. Yeah,
the old guns.
The softies.
Yeah.
No, those are like all of Hollywood's hardest men. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but that's a good example where like they're older, but they can still, I mean, half of them are in their 60s, but they could, I mean, I'm 31 and they could probably beat me up pretty easily.
Yeah. Inter looks like that cast. They seem to be on the downhill. But at Inter, they give a second push in their professional career. And Inzaghi really put them together and make a piece and form a really competitive force. Only in Serie A, but in Europe.
Yeah, they made some interesting moves. I mean, they got rid of the likes of Lukaku, Brazovic in midfield. Onana came to United. Thanks for that, Inter. But I think they offloaded in the region of 130 million euros worth of players, and then they signed 14 players that only cost about 60 million euros. And what they've managed to achieve with that team has been pretty phenomenal. And yeah, I think a lot of those players were overlooked, but they've come into Inter and they've performed really well. And I think the players deserve credits, but Inzaghi also deserves credit for, I think, creating a almost family-like atmosphere in the dressing room. And brought in key players in key positions. I also think that the partnership between Captain Lautaro Martinez and the free signing of Marcus Thuram has been amazing. And Martinez has also really stepped up as captain. And I also, funny enough, there's also 3 or 4 key players in that Inter team that are diehard Inter Milan fans too. And I think, honestly, like, I know it sounds funny because you think of footballers as being professionals and they should give their all no matter what. But I think, they are human beings at the end of the day. And I think if you are a fan of your club and you're playing for that club, I think if you're giving 100% in every game, if you're playing for the team that you support, I think you give 120%. And if you've got 4 or 5 players that can do that, I think that can make a major difference. Again, I know I keep mentioning United because I'm a United fan, and I just can't believe the direction United are going in at the moment. It's so anti everything that football used to stand for when they were successful. But I also think of the likes of young players. It's a little bit different, but they were United supporters that came through. Gary Neville, Phil Neville, David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes, that were kind of unknowns, but then went on to achieve incredible success with a combination of talent, but also being through and through Manchester United men. And there's a little bit of that at Inter. So I think there's a combination of various factors that people, including Inter fans, probably didn't see when the season began. But as the season progressed, leading to the point where Inter lifted that Scudetto, clearly the combination of all of those formulas has brought incredible success. And I hope that other teams, including Manchester United, look at that.
Learned a lesson.
Tianyu, when you look at, I would say, the surprising fashion in which Inter Milan lifted that Scudetto, what have you made of it? What do you think they got right?
Well, I think it's a great season for Inter as they really kind of got off to a bad start and somehow managed to overcome all the problems. And at the beginning of the season, they didn't even have like a starting goalkeeper as they sold Andrea Onana to Manchester United.
Thanks again for that.
And they lost a bunch of other key players as well, like you said, Romelu Lukaku, adding Dzeko,
yes,
and Marcelo Brozovic.
Yeah.
Particularly the departure of Lukaku, whose betrayal has angered many Inter fans.
To put it lightly, I mean, they were burning his shirts. They went absolutely mental.
That's still a heavy blow to the team's attacking lineup. Because for Inter,
well, that's what we thought, right?
Yeah.
Because it clearly proved to be something good for them.
Yeah, but for Inter, it must feel like getting betrayed by a husband who promises to live the rest of his life with you and go to have dinner with another woman the next day.
But historically, between AC Milan and Inter, we've seen a lot of domestic disputes and cheating and lover spats. Because if you think of R9, Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic, Hernan Crespo, I think. There's been lots of Andrea Pirlo. So many players that apparently don't believe in the sanctity of marriage when it comes between Inter and AC Milan. They are very happy. Lots of cheating in the Serie A.
It's dirty.
Yeah, and apparently it's continuing. Yeah, Lukaku's keeping up the trend.
Yeah. And more importantly, it like kind of ruined their plan for the lineup. If they knew Lukaku would leave the team, I think Inter wouldn't have let Dzeko go easily.
Yeah.
And they ended up with Lautaro Martinez, the only viable striker before the season started. And
not a bad option to have, though. I mean, a World Cup winner, a proven goal scorer. I mean, I know, look, the loss of Lukaku and Dzeko, considering their talent and their experience, is a huge loss. But I think it seems like Martinez really took that to heart and stepped up, man. Really stepped up.
Did what the captain needs to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, in such a crisis, Inter made a few right decisions that I think has largely led to their successes to this season. First of all, the basic strategy that Simone Inzaghi took this season was to shift their focus on Serie A. Last season, their decision to fight their way in the Champions League and downplay their efforts in the domestic league has earned them the honor of runners-up in UEFA.
Yeah,
and
phenomenal achievement though, because no one expected that, and also it must be nice for Simone to get the headlines over his brother for a change.
They were like the biggest black horse last season.
No one saw them coming. I mean, I was kind of, as a United supporter, I don't watch the Champions League that much anymore, unfortunately. I get to watch the Europa League or the Conference League. But, I mean, Inter kind of sailed past everybody, and no one expected them to even get to, I think, the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So to see them playing against that dominant City team, and actually not play too badly in that final, was amazing.
Just conceded one goal, I think.
Yeah.
They had chances to equalize even.
Yes.
It was back and forth. And this season was exactly the contrary. They rotated their squad in the Champions League and went all out in Serie A. And also, in terms of tactics, Inzaghi gave a lot of freedom to his players on the pitch. He made sure the newcomers can integrate into the squad as quickly as possible. And
but maybe that's where the signing of some of those older players was quite intelligent as well, because there's definitely a good combination of youth and experience.
The chemistry. Another factor to their success is the players they signed, the likes of like Yang Guang said, Benjamin Pavard and Jan Sommer.
Yes.
And
I've
Marcus
always liked
Thuram.
him, though. I know he gets a bit of a bad rap, but whenever I've seen him perform, particularly in the Bundesliga, I always thought he was a fantastic shot stopper.
He's
Jan
really...
Sommer for how many? 64 million. No, 6 million euro. It's almost a free transfer.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering the experience and talent that he has.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of a bad game that he's ever had. I've always liked him as a player.
He has been reliable all the time. Yeah, and these players are really solid replenishments to their squad.
Whereas Onana thinks he's like a centre back or a midfielder or something. I don't know what's going on at United, but goalkeeping seems to be the last thing on his mind.
And it seems like Inter can always get the players they need, even though their fund for transfer window is pretty limited. Yeah. And I think that is largely thanks to their young boss, Zhang Kangyang, owner of the Chinese e-commerce platform Suning.
But he's also brought in some other very intelligent football minds to supplement what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
I think someone, I don't know who exactly it was, but there was some football executive from Juventus that joined Inter. And I think he's also been key in some of Inter signings. I can't think of his name, but I think he was a big part of Juve's success in the past.
Yeah, I think
so he's made some clever appointments.
Yeah, I think not many bosses of other clubs can do what he did. Zhang gave a big say and a lot of trust to his manager in terms of the choices of players in the squad. And he was really supportive for the club, even though he and his company are kind of struggling with financial issues. And I think many other football managers...
Sorry, the chief executive, Beppe Marotta, that's the guy that he brought in. And I think he's been, along with Simone Inzaghi, I think them together with Zhang, I think have been very instrumental in getting those players that have brought them success, but also critically, like we've already mentioned, for costs that they could afford.
Making smart decisions. And
off the field. Before putting together a squad, which I think is a really smart move.
And I think many other football club owners are more like bossy, and they always had a bad relationship with their managers. And a case in point would be Chelsea's boss, Todd Bowley. And if
United, hello, for like the last decade, yes, we've had people making decisions about the club that know nothing about football and are only concerned about financials.
Yeah, if you take a look at the Chelsea squad this season and their game results, you would know how important it is for a club owner to be just supportive and stay out of the other businesses of the club.
The Chelsea thing is weird, though. I think there is potential for that situation to turn around because a lot of those players that Bowley brought in are on something like 8-year contracts, which we've never seen in professional football. Yeah. But so as things stand, it's going terribly. But maybe some of those young talents might go on to, achieve something great at Chelsea. But yeah, I agree. I mean, at this point, if you compare that model to what Inter has done, if you just compare what's going on right now, the financials, Inter makes what some of the Premier League teams are doing, and I mean even the likes of like PSG and a couple of other clubs that have spent a lot of money, it makes what Inter's done, it makes what those clubs have done look almost
stupid.
Stupid, literally.
Making these comparisons let me wonder if Manchester United is in Serie A, do you think in terms of how much they have spent, how much investment they've made on players compared to what Inter has spent, do you think United can win the Serie A title?
You know what? I think so, because I think because I think there are some players at United that are better suited for a league like Serie A than the Premier League, because the Premier League is so fast-paced and it relies on athleticism and very intricate tactics, and a lot of that has to do with the Pep Guardiola influence and Jurgen Klopp as well to a certain extent. But if I think of the likes of Varane, Maguire, Casemiro, older heads, well, not Maguire, just an empty head, actually. But if I think of like Varane, Casemiro, players like that are so experienced and are great on the ball, especially when they've got time to make decisions and are defensive-minded, and Maguire, who, I mean, I always make fun of him, but like one-on-one, if he's not facing someone that's very fast, is a pretty decent defender.
Yeah.
And with that squad, without injuries, I think they could do quite well in Serie A. But again, if they were only competing for like the top four, not winning it, and a team like Inter Milan, who's only spent half of what United have actually spent on sometimes one player, it's a joke. I mean, if they were run correctly and if they were operating like that in Serie A, I think half of United's board would be let go, because some of the financial decisions, and not just at United, for a lot of Premier League and other European League teams, if they look at Inter as a model and the success that they've achieved compared to what some other giant clubs that have spent giant amounts of money have achieved, so many people would be out of the job. I mean, it hasn't happened, but if you compare them, it's light and day. It's crazy.
So credits must be given to
very
President
much so.
Zhang Kangyang here.
Absolutely.
He took
Speaking about him, Yang Guang, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, he took over the team when Inter was struggling with financial crisis. But step by step, Zhang managed to put the team back on track by making cost-effective deals in the transfer market. And I think
COVID hit Inter harder than, and the Serie A in particular, more than a lot of other teams. I mean, I also think of Juventus as well. I think Juventus still owe Cristiano Ronaldo like 11 million euros in wages. I think the Serie A in particular, for some reason, really were probably the hardest hit top league by COVID.
Yeah, and Zhang gave full support to the coaching team and the players. He hired a completely local team to operate the team and created a healthy atmosphere inside the team. He really gets along with the players. For example, after Inter won the Serie A title, the players video messaged Zhang from the pitch, and Federico Di Marco immediately asked for salary raise. I mean, he surely knows what time to ask that question. But as a Chinese boss, he didn't earn trust in the beginning, Zhang. I remember there were a lot of questions from Inter fans, even from China, about Zhang's future with the club. He's too young. He doesn't know. He knows nothing about football. He just sees Inter as a toy. Things like this. But it turned out he brought Inter out of the mess and won 7 titles in 4 seasons.
And I like a word that you mentioned there earlier. He kept it local. And I think that was an important move. I think a lot of foreign owners come in and use people and models that worked in their country or with their team and try and apply it to a different culture and a different team. And Zhang didn't do that with Inter. He kept a lot of Serie A experts within his team that were making decisions with regards to tactics with Inzaghi, Morata, with decisions about transfers and that kind of thing. So I think that he puts... Look, I mean, he's still the big boss at the end of the day, but I think he also put Serie A and Italian football culture experts in key positions off the field, and then brought in a lot of players that also have experience in Serie A on the field, and did so for low fees. So I think that the way that he delegated, I think, was very, very smart. He didn't go in there trying to put his stamp on the club. He delegated incredibly well, and I think that's a sign of a very good leader.
There was a poll recently, and it showed that over 60% of Inter fans in Italy want to see Zhang continue to lead the club because they are really happy about things happening now with this team.
Yeah. And that's understandable. And I mean, when we've talked about Inter's success and how incredibly well they're doing. Tianyu, Napoli, what's happened there? Because they were probably one of the shouts at the beginning of the season to go on and achieve incredible success. And they have been doing well in the last, 2, 3, 4 seasons. But this season, absolutely nowhere.
I think the biggest loss for Napoli this season is the departure of their manager, Luciano Spalletti. He's the reason why Napoli can earn the Serie A title last season.
Yeah.
And he had formed his prestige and gained trust from his players in the first place during the last 2 seasons in the team.
Do you think they got rid of him too soon? Because I think at the beginning of this season, things were still not going Napoli's way while he was still manager, right? And I think they got rid of him quite early on.
I think he quit the job.
Oh, did he quit?
Last
Okay.
season,
after
before
Napoli won the championship.
Oh, that's right. Yes. He left, and then they brought in who did they? Oh, they brought in Rudy Garcia.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I think he left after 16 games, and the Napoli president, De Laurentiis, also said something very negative about him. He said, I think Garcia said something like, I don't even watch Serie A.
Yeah,
I've never watched Napoli
that was
play.
insane.
Yeah. And then De Laurentiis was like, geez, if I'd known that, I would have gotten rid of him after one game. Something like that. But I mean, so that was a terrible replacement to bring in for Spalletti, who had achieved so much success with Napoli.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's hard to find a club owner that can be totally supportive to his manager. Spalletti had a clash with Napoli boss De Laurentiis in terms of his contract extension and salary things, and he left the club. And De Laurentiis.
Is it? It's De Laurentiis.
De Laurentiis.
Yeah.
De Laurentiis thought that with the talent pool he has, all the brilliant players that the team has, the likes of Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, Napoli can stride on.
That's the Georgian player. I just call him the Georgian player because I have no idea how to pronounce his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about. He's been linked with Real Madrid, and he's an amazing player.
We can call him KK.
Yeah, let's call him KK. But he's a fantastic player.
Yeah, he's a fantastic
And the partnership with him and Osimhen is awesome.
Yeah. So the owner think that Napoli can stride on without Spalletti, and the results proved he was totally wrong. The 3 coaches after Spalletti was gone, they were nowhere near Spalletti.
Yeah, it's Garcia, Mazzari.
Yeah,
I don't even know who their latest coach is.
Me neither. Yeah, and the team was once reduced to the relegation zone during the season. So again, it kind of proved how important it is to have an owner that supports and trusts the jobs of his manager.
Absolutely. But I also think we've mentioned Osimhen, and I think he's also really struggled this season with injuries, and I think he was also away at the Africa Cup of Nations for a while, right? So do you think, Yang Guang, that also may have had an effect on Napoli's performance, or do you think it's mostly down to De Laurentiis and the argument that he had with Spalletti and just the revolving door of managers, which brings in different tactics and that, it seems like there was a mess created off the field before there was now the mess that we're seeing on the field.
Yeah, the combination of all of those things. I think Spalletti and the other key players' departure really changed the vibe inside this team. Yes, Napoli didn't start the season well, but it doesn't mean you should frequently change your coach. I mean, having 2 head coaches changed in a single season, no team can play proper football. No team can keep consistency. It's meant to be a messy season, and Napoli didn't keep the players on some key positions. Selling Kim Min-jae to Bayern was typically a lose-lose situation. Kim never reached the level he did with Napoli, with Bayern, and Napoli made a lot of disappointing deals with the money they earned from that transfer.
I don't know did Koulibaly leave in this most recent transfer window, or was it that was a long time ago. But I mean, he was also such an instrumental player for them, but I mean, I think that was a while ago.
And Napoli's move last summer reminded me of the Dallas Mavericks after they won the first NBA championship. They sent away cool players like Tyson Chandler, J.J. Barea, Caron Butler. Their whole championship winning squad was changed, and the next season they suffered a big slump. When you achieved something big with a group of players, you should keep the squad intact. Napoli could have been a title contender, or at least fighting for the top 4 this season, like what their level was before the title.
I mean, I tend to agree with you, but then look at what Inter did. They rebuilt their squad entirely and it worked out for them. So I think it depends on the situation. And sometimes it's luck, I guess, because Inter's plan and transfer approach could have really failed. But it worked out for them. But so sometimes it is important to keep a core squad of players, again, like United back in the early 2000s, where they kept some of those players for like 10 years. But then, I mean, what Inter Milan has done with a completely revamped squad is pretty amazing.
I think Napoli's hierarchy should take the responsibility here.
I agree.
If you don't
off the field issues that caused the on-field issues.
If you don't have a perfect plan B, then stick to plan A.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I mean, look, I guess De Laurentiis couldn't have anticipated all of this to happen. I think, maybe he undervalued Spalletti and maybe certain players that left. So I think decisions were made off the field that they hoped would impact the team positively on the field, but it hasn't worked out that way. And again, with Inter, I think a lot of the off-the-field issues that they dealt with weren't necessarily that negative or personal, besides the Lukaku issue. So I think they were able to make informed decisions, where it sounds like a lot of the decisions made at Napoli were based on ego and pride and disagreements and that kind of thing. And I think that's really hurt Napoli this season. But sticking with the Serie A, Tianyu, do you think that they compete with other top leagues around the world? Should we be taking the Serie A more seriously? No, I mean, we take them seriously. I mean, look, they are still top 4 or 5 leagues in the world. But I mean, should we see them as up there with, the likes of, for example, the English Premier League and Bundesliga?
Well, I think the Italian clubs are doing really well currently. This season, Inter Milan, Napoli, and Lazio all qualified for the knockout rounds of the Champions League. And in Europa League, they have Roma and Atlanta all through to the semifinals.
Right.
So I think Serie A may not have any money, but at least their clubs are fighting hard on the pitch.
I think where they deserve credit is that their mid-level teams have become stronger. And I think that's very important for a league success. We're starting to see it in Bundesliga. It's always, for the last decade, I would say it's been there in the Premier League. In the Serie A and La Liga, I think that's always been an issue. But I think looking at the Serie A now, where they might be a little bit ahead of La Liga, for example, is the performances of their mid-table teams. Yeah. Whereas in La Liga, it's still kind of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico, and Girona also having this incredible season. And Girona. Bilbao are always kind of up there as well. But it's normally 3 or 4 teams. But again, you normally only have 2 teams competing for the title, whereas things have seemingly opened up in Serie A, which is great from the neutral's perspective. Yangguang?
Well, I think Serie A is still a competitive league, but not anymore an attractive destination for star players, top players.
Yeah. Financial reasons, I guess?
Yeah. Serie A feels like a very old yet seasoned hunter to me. He can still get praise, but not the best ones, because his legs are becoming heavy.
Yeah. But he still gets the job done. Maybe not flashy, but still gets it done.
And the lack of efficiency almost make him broken.
Maybe that should be the Serie A slogan. Not super flashy, but we get the job done. Because that's what Inter Milan, I mean, that's basically what they've done. Haven't really played flashy football. Don't have any big names, but they got the job done.
Yeah. Serie A has a really glorious past, and they are proud of this.
I see so many nostalgic videos on social media when, like the likes of Inter Milan and AC Milan are lining up, and it shows like Gattuso and Pirlo and Seedorf and Ronaldinho and
Shevchenko.
Yeah, Shevchenko, and Maldini and all of these incredible players.
Kaká.
Yeah, Kaká, and I think all that generation has gone, and I think that's what. And funny enough, even people that watch Serie A or don't watch Serie A now, but think of that league, they still think of that time.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that time was almost like 20 years ago. So I think that period of Serie A has gone. But I think the performances of the likes of Inter and the increase in strength of those mid-table teams it makes the Serie A and some of their teams a dark horse. I think particularly in European competitions, like you mentioned, Tianyu. So I think that's kind of their advantage at this stage, is that people underestimate them. And I think that's going to lead to, it's led to Inter's success in Serie A, but it also could lead to other teams' success, maybe not necessarily in the Champions League, but in competitions like the Europa League and that kind of thing. I think Italian teams are heavily underestimated.
A comparison here, I think the Premier League is like very young, muscular, mercenary, fully equipped and energetic. He can get whatever prey in sight with modern weaponry. He's getting richer and richer with efficient kills in the hunting game. That's the comparison of Premier League against Serie A to me. That's the impression the two leagues have left me. Serie A used to be called the Little World Cup among Chinese fans as a magnet for star players. But now it seems like the Premier League has replaced them. Serie A's decline seems inevitable considering the financial issues, and it looks like there's no way back for now.
Yeah, it feels like the Premier League capitalized on the success that they had before money came into football. So, I mean, when you think of the early 2000s and you think of United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and those teams that were kind of dominating English football at that stage, they had all of the star players, but it wasn't necessarily a financial thing. They just somehow managed to develop incredible talent the culture, and also bring in some incredible European talent, but not as much as we're seeing now. Whereas in the decades that have passed, I think that global spotlight that fell on the Premier League brought in investment that we've seen in the likes of Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, and even some of those and again, also
Newcastle.
Newcastle, And I also think away from the financials, they also have these mid-level teams that have nowhere near the amount of money that the top teams have, that are also still competing and actually a lot of times defeat those big teams. So I think the combination of money and competitiveness has made the English Premier League so great. Whereas I guess in the Serie A, it's a similar situation, but it doesn't seem to be linked to financials. Whereas in the past, I think the financial side of it brought in a lot of incredibly talented players, and also, the success of AC Milan in particular in European competition also, I think, brought in a lot of talent, not just to AC Milan, but to Inter Milan as well. But when we look at Inter Milan's performances and the increased competitiveness of Serie A Yang Guang, of course we have Euro 2024 coming up. Do you think that could filter into potential success for the Italian national team? Because I have my doubts.
I think Italy is a very interesting team that when you underestimate them, they can always give you a slap. And by generating some unexpected
or a headbutt. Receive a headbutt.
But when you are optimistic about their performance, they have huge flop. It's like against whatever team, powerhouses or underdogs, they can always play 50-50 games. So considering the mediocre results of Italian clubs this season, European competitions, and the fact that Italy lacks absolute superstar standing
I can't even name
out,
one besides like Donnarumma, I guess, in goal.
I would say they will surprise everyone. Again, I would not be surprised if they can go all the way to the final,
like what they did in 2020.
No, I think the strength of other European teams at this point in time is so insane. But I mean, like you've said, we've said that in the past, and Italy surprises. But man, they've had some talent in the past that helps them surprise other teams. And I guess again, like when Italy won, what was it in 2006 when they won the World Cup? No, when they won the World Cup in 2006.
Yeah.
They, I guess, were a surprise team, but they also had a whole bunch of superstars that were kind of on the tail end of their career. So I think that was what brought them success back then, whereas now, I guess their underdog tag, like Inter, maybe could bring something for them at Euro 2024, but when I look at England and France and a couple of those other teams, I definitely have my doubts. Look, I think if they get to the semi-finals, I think that would be an incredible achievement. But beyond that, I don't know. Tianyu, do you have as much optimism as Yang Kwang about Italy's potential success?
I agree with you. I don't think Italy won't make any big breakthroughs.
I'd be surprised,
what
man.
They did. Yeah,
I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, they would be a giant black horse if they ever made any big upsets in the upcoming.
But they tend to make international competitions very exciting, and Inter Milan have definitely made Serie A and even to a certain extent European football very exciting this season. So it'll be interesting to see if some of that underdog success can be carried over into the Italian national team when the Euro 2024 competition comes around. But I think as things stand, massive congratulations to Inter Milan, and hopefully other teams like Manchester United and other teams with massive budgets and that sort of thing can look at that Inter Milan model and hopefully bring some of that success to their own team. But that is all we have time for on this week's episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course we will be back next week with our latest topic, and we'll see you then.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.